Well, good evening, everyone. I am John O'Loughlin. Welcome to Macduff Lives, and very, very happy tonight because I get my trio back together for one last time this year in 2022, and it's great to have you two gentlemen with us, David Cranmer Underdown and Mark Kulacz. Good evening, guys.
Good evening, Mark. Good evening, John.
Hello, John. Hello, David.
All right, we're all together. Um, well, it's the last night was the shortest, the longest night today, the shortest day of the year. I remember when I was doing a lot of performing with a group called the Revels, the Christmas Revels, which occurs in a lot of the major cities, and we had a gentleman named Norman Kennedy that came from Scotland, who was a master of the old trade of weaving and also knew all the old Scottish folklore. And he was the first person to tell me, because he heard my name, O'Loughlin. He said, do you know where you're from? And I said, yeah, from Ireland. He says, no, you're a Viking. I said, "Oh, what do you mean a Vikings?" "Oh, well, Lochland is Lochland, and Lakeland is Norway. You're a Norse Viking." Okay, all right. So that was the beginning of my exploring a lot of interesting roots. That I do think there's Viking blood in there. But the other thing that he talked about and did a ceremony, part of the show was about something called the Hogmanay. And the hogmanay was a little coal that you kept from the previous year's fire, and you had to keep it burning all night, to make sure that there was continuity into the next year. And so we've just passed over that magical time from, ancient wisdom tells us that, the new year is beginning now and right now. So, with that, what do you guys think? Are we still kind of subject to the ancient rhythms of the world and the environment and the spiritual connections as well?
Take it away, David.
Well,
I don't even know where to start.
So one of my very great experiences growing up was I got to go to a summer camp in Vermont near very close to where Dartmouth is in Hanover. It was actually in Vermont on the other side of the Connecticut River, and it was a Viking themed camp. So I was sort of exposed to the different Viking gods because like the different levels you'd attain were Loki, Tyr, Thor, and Odin. So I don't know, like that stuff. Like I never really thought a lot about it because as I've said, like my childhood was basically like I didn't have a relationship with my dad's family, and then on my mom's side, it was like everybody was from Southern Indiana, and that was where everybody started. So it's been very interesting going through that. But then, of course, you'll get like a character that I was talking to Rick Olson over Twitter about, and McGeorge Bundy, who was somebody that was a Yale Skull and Bones guy, and then he was a professor at Harvard. But when he was Skull and Bones, both he and his dad were known as Odin, was their Skull and Bones name. So I always have these like, I'm grateful that I had those experiences with the camp where you were just like a little bit of exposure to stuff like that because it is interesting to me. I don't know. I mean, I think it's great to meet somebody from Scotland that's interested in all those old stories. I like that stuff. I think it's very interesting to explore it.
I've been becoming aware of more and more other archaeologists on YouTube over the last several months. And I'll tell you what, there are just worlds and worlds of information out there. All the different religions and cultures and mythology. I have a lot of respect for the people who really dig into it. Not just like current interpretations of it, but really do their own digging into it. I guess I'm just kind of I'm pretty vanilla when it comes to a lot of that stuff. This past year, I've just been trying to keep it really simple and focus on my own Christian faith and rediscovering that. But there is a world of just fascinating folklore, and I know it's not just fantasy. There's a lot of historical background to much of it. Uh, Boy, I just feel I am just plain Andres vanilla when it comes to that particular topic, though.
Well, I don't think so, Mark. I think you've got a lot of color in your attitude towards life, and I appreciate it. I do admire your professionalism in your show. I admire the way that you are always going to hesitate before making a judgment. You're always going to look at things from different points of view, and very seldom do I find you being judgmental at all. But what instead to try to document the facts and then to archive them as you do, and that's very, very special. I don't think I could do that if I tried to do that with my stuff. I don't know. I just don't think I could do it. I have like 1,000, maybe 1,200 videos that are stuck on my hard drive in various places, or on various separate drives, and they're not organized. They're just I just threw them on there when I made them, and it would be a challenge to go through and find them. But my dream really is to I don't know if you remember when I started this TV thing, this kind of if you look on my website, screamingospreys.com, it's still there,
Mhm.
although I haven't kept it up. But the idea is that I could put my book readings and then my selected interviews and my minefields and just all kinds of stuff there, and just leave it there on 10 or 12 different channels, so that you could like watch one channel and watch the whole book through, and watch a different channel to get maybe interviews or subjects like healthcare versus a subject like the Jesuits or something like that, and go through. But um, and I really am working in that direction. It's going to be at least another year, probably, at the pace I'm going, that I can get it organized. I am not technically proficient, and that's the weakest part of what I do. But and I really do admire your work. And boy, you're getting a lot of attention. I think JJ Couey is a fascinating addition to my palette of sources. Nick, of course,
Mhm.
Nick from Twitter is really an amazing resource that has tied me up with my dad's hepatitis case, and I, I'm kind of like I wish I could study that stuff more and really get into it. But I think really just you guys are actually getting into it for me in a way that when we study this hepatitis B and the vaccine trials, we go right back into that era of the early '60s. So I'm benefiting a lot from that. And I've really enjoyed this year getting to know Edward Slav Squad. I don't know if you've been able to catch him on my show, but he's a terrific writer. He has a Substack and gives us a perspective on what's going on in Russia and Eastern Europe. And kind of like the whole, I guess for the first half of this year, people were kind of thinking, well, maybe Russia doesn't really do the same thing that we do. Maybe they've got something that's, not the mRNA, or not as maybe sketchy as what we're looking at. But no, we learned from Riley, that they're using the same stuff. They're getting it from AstraZeneca and the other companies. So
I have to admit that's been some of your best series this past year. I've really enjoyed listening to him. I like his. I mean, he has. I think he has some Ukrainian family that he's married to, maybe his wife,
yeah,
which puts him in an interesting situation because he lives in Russia, so he can see like both sides of it.
yeah,
And he's not really a fanboy of either of it. It's very practical, like no one there wants to be in this mess in either
no,
country. And then you have like the U.S. and all these other countries. We're like spectators at the slaughter. We're just like throwing knives and, here, take this and take that, and like almost wanting to see a fight and to fuel it. And I think it's very different there. At least that's what I've been able to gather from him. I'm sure there's people within the governments there who are perhaps, part of fueling this as well, and bankers and so on. But most of the citizens there are like, come on, just want to live our lives. Enough of this. But and now there's teenagers being conscripted into military. It's like, it's not a joke. It really isn't. And I haven't the foggiest idea the bigger agenda of what's going, on there. I still can't figure it out.
Well, the scale of these battles is World War II scale. I mean, there are, divisions upon divisions of troops on both sides, and, thousands and thousands and thousands. And the balance appears to be pretty balanced right now. I'm one of those that kind of addicted to watching the situation reports on a daily basis. I look at the maps, and I have a couple of the commentators I follow, and boy, there's between a couple hundred and a couple thousand young men getting killed every day, and on both sides, and if you look at the pictures or the video, I mean, it's a moonscape. I mean, there are so many craters on every single field has got a crater every square meter. It's like, it's incredible the amount of artillery that they've been firing off, and that these young people, are just getting murdered on both sides. To the only reason that it's happening, as far as I can see, is to increase the power of the existing, British Atlantic financial system, and to prevent that Russia from developing any type of a competition for that. That's what it looks like. But then on the other hand, the oil's still flowing through Ukraine from Russia to Europe. The gas, the gas pipelines are still open. If you were going to war with somebody, would you send your oil through their country? I mean, this is not a war. This is some kind of a horrible school play that involves deaths every day.
And it doesn't add up. Exactly to your point. It doesn't add up. Why would, some resources be flowing and not others? I just can't make heads or tails out of it. I mean, I don't know if I would describe myself as a nationalist, but I describe myself as just trying to focus. You can control your local life the most, right? That's where you can have the most impact, and then work your way out. And I think we would all agree of a litany of shortcomings in our own country first right now that are impacting many people. So it's horrible, this war that's happening there, but I don't look at it too much because it's a horrible thing. Maybe it's a horrible thing to say. It seems almost politically incorrect, but there's I have other even more pressing issues in my own homeland to deal with, and I guess you're not even allowed to say that anymore. You have to subscribe to the order of priorities as it's been dictated to us, which is not right. And I do try to understand from I look at the events of the Russian movements into Ukraine and the Donbass area, trying to map it out to other events relative to COVID. And one area that I've gotten into some of my own research on Houstonic.live is really digging in on and this is going to seem a little disjointed, but just hang in there, guys. The timeline of the product from Gilead called remdesivir, which has been used as an antiviral and or therapeutic for helping people who have been clinically diagnosed, symptomatically diagnosed with COVID-19. And it's got the emergency use authorization. And of course, there's the whole dispute as to whether or not it's still experimental or not. But all that aside, just by looking at that product development timeline, when it was used for trials for different things, its use in the COVID-19 response, I've been looking at those events, and I'm looking at other events that happened that seem unrelated, and you can sort of start to pull things together. What seemed to be disparate events seem to potentially have some connection of causality, right? And one thing that jumped out was, and it was in the process of doing this remdesivir timeline, which I have available. You can do a 2D or 3D viewer on it. It was at the end of January of 2020. The pandemic is breaking out, and you can see all the news stories about the new virus coming out and how it's impacting China and the body bags, etc. And I think a lot of us didn't really know it was going to go where it went. But I think we were kind of expecting, like, okay, here comes another SARS, right? Here comes another Ebola. This is a type of an Ebola. It's probably going to be on the land right now. So we weren't surprised, but I don't think any of us expected in our 4 years afterwards, almost, we're in our 4th year right now, we'd still be talking about this stuff, okay? But there was a big narrative, a big thing happened at the end of January. And a research paper came out of the country of India. And it from this biology university that did some analysis of the genetic sequence of the virus, and it made a provocative statement that it potentially looked like it had some signature of being related to HIV, the virus which is said to cause AIDS, or is known to have caused AIDS, right? And how that was unnatural. And then the paper was immediately retracted. Now, India hasn't had much of a role in the cause, or at least in the source of, or in the leading the response necessarily to SARS-CoV-2, right? But this paper just went boom, and then it went right back. And ever since then, it has been nonstop talk about, is it a lab leak? And if it's a lab leak, is it from China? Is it a weaponized China? Is it a weapon that was made in China, etc.? And then I looked at the address of that institute, and it's like right next to the military strategy, like center in New Delhi of India. And then you're like, it was probably going to be smooth sailing. It was a bat, and well, these things happen, and then we have the response. And it seems to me that there's a possibility that someone in India said, you know what, we could throw a real monkey wrench at China. Here's this paper. Boom. Oh, take it back. Boom. And since then, everything just kind of got messed up. And you could just see this cascade of events afterwards from that. It's like it just totally threw the timing of a whole bunch of the debate off, right? The trial dates changed. Now, we still had the pandemic, of course. But by looking at that one paper and then looking at a few other things, then I started to mapping other events. And so if India said, well, maybe we can use this as an opportunity to show that China is actually weaponizing germs, would then Russia make a move in Donbass, knowing that now maybe China is in this position or that? It just there's a lot more connections to the geopolitical, these military movements, these resource movements, to other announcements which have been made or sometimes have not been made relative to the pandemic. And even although it's not really a main route, the nation of Armenia, which is dead center Asia, right? Has deep connections to the CEO of Moderna. The CEO of Moderna is Armenian. The president of the Carnegie Institute for the last 20-something years, until he died a year ago, was Vartan Gregorian, who's Armenian. So you have tons of Moderna support going to Armenia, which is like right in the middle of, it's just, anyways, I'm just throwing this out there that there seems to be a lot more potential, anyways, connections to all of these other military movements and resource movements to announcements of certain therapies or death counts from viruses, etc. And I've discovered a few, but I suspect there's a lot more for a lot of other people to find out there.
I have not looked into Armenia at all, and really can't offer anything on that. I do, and David, forgive me for asking Mark to clarify one thing, though. I do suspect, Mark, that there's still these. It's instead of looking at it on national lines like China versus Russia or something like that, India versus China. Think of it in terms of the blocks that we're trying to identify within the U.S., like the DTRA and the BARDA people that you and I have talked about before. And is that tension there? Because
oh yes,
I think the U.S. is really the big 800-pound gorilla in the room, and I don't think a program in India or even China is going to have the international impact that whatever America does. So I think there's a power struggle within America to control the agenda as to what do you do when you learn how to manipulate genes like this. And anyway, what?
Yes,
You see what I'm saying? Yeah.
Absolutely. When you let go of looking at things at the national level. So one research paper that comes out of one institute in India certainly doesn't speak for everyone in India, because there's plenty of division in there too. But the paper that preceded that, also out of that military institute, which accused someone in Canada of being a Chinese spy responsible for smuggling Ebola to and from China. That was actually a research paper that was republished out of a military institute in Israel from another Israeli researcher who has 9/11 connections. And it's just, so again, there's many non-government organizations. There's infighting within the agencies around the world. And there's probably a very serious battle right now, and the lines are very hard to see, over who's going to be at the top of the stack, the top of the heap, who's going to run the show with all of this genetic research, genomic data collection that is going to be happening over the next several decades, presumably. I'm not sure it can be stopped. I'm at all. I think our best bet is to just understand it, observe it, and bring awareness to it. I don't think it's going to stop at all. But yes, to your point, you're right. And a more nuanced view, instead of just looking at it as this country versus that country, is necessary. I don't know how you would feel about that, David, but I think it's mandatory.
Well, the way I think about it is I always try to look at historical linkages, and the family that connects to me, that connects the whole thing, is the Morgenthau family, because Hans Morgenthau was he was one of the early Zionist leaders around World War I. His son was Henry Morgenthau, that was the next door neighbor of FDR. They had farms next to each other, and he became the Treasury Secretary, and he was the man that created the Morgenthau Plan after World War II, and that was an atomic. He wrote a book called "Germany is the Problem." That was basically, he wanted to take away all military from Germany after World War II. His nuclear power and nuclear weaponry program was rejected. It became the Baruch Plan was adopted. But Hans Morgenthau, besides being one of the key leaders in the creation of the state of Israel, he was also very involved with the Armenian genocide and recognition for the Armenian genocide as well. Part of the reason that I'm attuned to this stuff is because, again, like the unexplainable situation where the president of the University of Michigan in 1880 goes to China and he is negotiating an opium and a coolie slave trade deal for the State Department of the United States. His name was James Burrell Angel. His son became the president of Yale University. But he also did a mission in Turkey where he was studying the Armenian genocide as well. So that's not a new thing. I mean, and I know that you've been going over the different people at Moderna, and then I can't remember the
it was a few months ago, yeah.
Gregorian, the guy from the
Bartan Gregorian, yeah. From the president of Carnegie Institute. Because
again, like all those things do kind of tie together. And then of course with Robert Morgenthau, he was the lawyer that was, in the Southern District of New York that did like the BCCI trial and like a lot of like key, just like very important. And again, it's one of those things where I think John probably knows better because of his experience in law, but it's just very interesting to me how the Southern District of New York sort of becomes this funnel point for all these international incidents where it seems like if there's any like trading activity that happens in Wall Street, that these seemingly foreign, out of jurisdiction situations are brought into the Southern District of New York. So that's something that's always fascinating to me because, again, like you look at like the Abrams family with I'm trying to think of the Abrams, the one that did the represent the New York Times during Watergate, or
Elliot.
Say it again.
Elliot Abrams.
Elliot Abrams, and then his cousin was Dan Abrams, that was the national security advisor, and he was the one that, went over to negotiate the transfer of money with Bruce Rappaport and the Sultan of Brunei. That's the whole Fawn Hall story where she screwed up the numbers on the transmit, on the wire transfer that sort of broke the Iran-Contra scandal. That was the cousin. And then there's a Ronnie Abrams, who's a current judge in the Southern District of New York. And she's handled the Devin Archer case, which was the Rosemont Seneca partner of Hunter Biden. And, he defrauded the Sioux Indian tribe. She did that one. She did one of the Trump and Epstein, abuse case. She dropped that one, but she's been involved in a lot of interesting cases. And then her husband was on the Mueller counsel. So you have or the special counsel. So you have all these like intriguing, New York lawyer families that sort of seem to tie back to, the beginning of kind of like the World War I era, where they're, it seems to just be the same families. And then, of course, Mark, you've done a lot of work on the Columbia Network, because that's one that we keep harping on. You were talking about Hermann Mueller the other day and his sort of role with how he was handpicked by Julian Huxley to go to Rice University. And then he was, involved in Russia, working on genetics in Russia for a while. Then he comes back and goes to the University of Chicago. He becomes a mentor to Carl Sagan. And then he inexplicably ends up as the next door neighbor in Bloomington, Indiana, of my mom. And again, it's like, how does this guy go through all this progression? But that Mueller he was a Columbia student, and he was working in the Fly Lab at Columbia doing the early genetic work. But he was also in a literary club with Simon Pelham Barr, who's the grandfather of Bill Barr, who again were right back into these same BCCI bank, Iran-Contra, the Russian interference, the Trump impeachments, all these things. Again, it's like it seems to be this sort of tight network of people involved with like Colombia and New York that are just really seem to just keep popping up.
So, trying to understand the segue here.
I know it's a lot. I'm sorry. It's. I mean, I think that basically, I think the idea is that these, and if you go to Huxley, who I feel like is a really key. This is Julian Huxley. He also is really important because he was the one that was one of the creators of the World Wildlife Fund with, monarchs and specifically Philip and Bernard. He created the World Wildlife Fund. He also was the first director of UNESCO. So John posted he posted a old executive intelligence review where they talked a lot about UNESCO and how that its role with the United Nations. So that is just and they're very much partnered with World Health Organization, which again is another like major institution that we're talking about. And with you getting into these the investigation of these origins of the virus, Jeremy Farrar was just elevated just last week to the head of the World Health Organization, the chief scientist, and he of course was involved in many of the these pandemics as far as the investigation and tracking of the origins.
So if someone, David, gave you like I don't know, a minute, okay, say what is the overarching hypothesis, right? And I've been trying to work on a couple myself, right? Really even get it down to one, because that seems to be a catchy way for people to quickly get up to speed and understand the general idea, right? Of like a summary, and it's actually almost removed from nations, names, companies, like just a general hypothesis, right? What while the links are on beyond calculation, what would it be like? How would you describe, like, what are you unearthing? Like, how would you describe this model?
I honestly, I think it's as bad as I do think it is the sort of the eugenic people, getting back into the Thomas Malthus kind of that East India Company thinking, and then really blaming it on your rivals and using never admitting that that's what your policy is, but instead framing yourself as the person that comes in with the solution to these problems when, and taking no responsibility for involvement in participating, in the creation of them. And it's hard because, I just don't think I think that most people do want to do good and, not, and that's the hard part about it that I always struggle with, is because the people that I know that are, have legacies of families that are involved in these things. I mean, just look at like Bloomington, Indiana, where my mom's family's from. Some of the biggest eugenics people on record are from Bloomington. Mm-hmm. But my experience was my grandparents were never mention anything like that. They were good to people. They respected people. They were understanding of different people's situations. They were empathetic. They were not like, we're so much better and we need to just, populate the world with people that are, superior or whatever, even though that's like the connection of the people around them. So it's just hard because I feel like the thing that I get frustrated with is that I feel like the ones that are kind of managing these problems their goal is just to create chaos and confusion, and that's very easy to do, and it's hard to get, I feel like people are just not trusting because that's the experience, and people are just afraid. And so I don't know.
Trusting of each other, or trusting of the government, or
I think
something else?
with the I feel like we've all talked about it. I mean, I go a lot on my own personal experiences, and I struggle because I want obviously the best for my small family, and I struggle because my sister has completely different theories on how to handle the crisis we're in right now. And she's a single mother with my nephew, who's a second grader, and they're just not on board with what I'm trying to tell them. That's been really hard because like I said, everybody's very scared right now. And so that's just my personal experience. I mean, I can easily understand the struggles that people are having right now with losing family members or people getting sick or whatnot, because it's there's so much gotcha out there right now too, which is really hard. Where that's a very frustrating thing for me, is I feel like there's a lot of people that will nitpick little things to try to discredit you, even if you're coming from a I don't know. It's those are the things that I struggle with, where I'm just very sensitive to a lot of it, because I don't I just feel like there's a lot, like I said, there's so many people that are just either financially strained right now, or afraid of getting sick, or the relationships with their families are just a very hard environment. That's not a great answer. I don't have like I don't have the answer to it. I do think though that what we started with, talking about like the old folklore and all these old things, I think that there is, at the very, whatever you want to say, the top of the pyramid, I think that I think they do study those kind of relationships, and they're really in tune to these old sort of ancient vendettas and these kind of betrayals or mistreatments going back through history, that where they want to set the record straight or whatnot. But again, they don't share it. That's the thing that really bothers me, is that, like, if that's how you really feel in your heart, then explain why. Don't try to trick people, or play dumb or whatever when asked about it. Like, that's my big critique of it all. I always say that I should have been invited to be in all these different secret societies or whatnot. But I mean, that the thing that I struggle, I just feel like, if you really are that passionate about, your cause or your beliefs or whatever, you should just be honest about it and just say it, and not like try to do it, through deception or omission.
Well, that's where I've been studying this week, and just to chime in with my own material, I've been looking into the Welfs, the Guelph is the Italian version, or WELF is the German version, but it's the family. It's the ancient Italian or German Bavarian family.
Oh, the Welfs.
Yeah, the kings of.
I thought you were studying people with a lot of wealth.
No. Well, that too.
Maybe just had a lemon or something.
All right. All right. Let's stick with me now. This is not easy stuff.
I'm sorry. I have serious stuff. I know.
The ancient rivalry between the Welfs and the Ghibellines, is over in the 1100s, 1200s, and the Welfs have won. And the Welfs are the party that favored the Pope, as opposed to the Ghibellines that favored the Holy Roman Emperor. So that battle's over in 1200 or so. But of course, people are still divided. The Welfs now divide into two parts, and that's what I think is the new scholarship I've come across this week. There's the white Welfs and the black Welfs. And the black Welfs are the black nobility. the black Welsh are the ones that are the still, the ones that are running Milan and Venice and Genoa and Rome, I guess. But the ancient fondi, the money of the ancient empires that is still concentrated there, probably in a Swiss bank account now, but that ancient family money. And Dave is talking about ancient family rivalries. So
Mhm.
this is the ancient mindset, is that it's mine and you can't have it, and if you try to get it, I'm going to kill you. And so that that breeds a Machiavelli. That breeds a somebody that will say, if you want to be the prince, you've got to engage in deception, assassination. You've got to have a murder incorporated to call on, hey, who will rid me of this truculent priest, and um, that that attitude of empire is the black wealth attitude. Opposed to that are the ones that are become the oligarchs, the ones that are like, hey, let's just do business, Yeah, sure, Pope, we'll kneel down on Sundays and we'll go to mass and we'll, do the little Christian thing, but we're here to do business, okay? So don't interfere too much, Pope, because we're running some really important deals right now, you know. And my buddy here, he's got the oil, and I've got the textiles, and the transportation is being provided by my buddy over there in Michigan, and they cartelize everything, and that's where I think we have still in the person of Henry Morgenthau an excellent example. Because if you go back to what David was saying about World War II, and at the end of the war, of course, everybody wanted to make sure that Germany would never rise up again. I mean, this was not just one, but two horrible world wars, and following a very military 19th century as well, with Germany defeating France and Prussia and defeating Austria. And I mean, they whooped up on everybody. And it's, there's an awful lot of writing about that time, about how the German personality is simply a warlike personality, and there's nothing we can do about it. So we've got to defang it. And not only were they demilitarizing Germany, they were deindustrializing Germany. This was Morgenthau's idea, was that we've just got to basically turn this place back into serfs.
Mm.
That's the only thing that we can do with them right now. And then we'll have to retrain them and bring them back up, into some civilized form later, But right now, all we can do with them is reduce them to a very, very basic, minimal existence, and make sure that they don't ever get the power to wage war again. And that was kind of like Roosevelt was like with that, you know. But then Roosevelt suddenly disappeared. Um, and, then we got the Truman guy, and the Truman, guy was like kind of going along with Winston Churchill and all that. And then there was the Iron Curtain. And then, no, we cannot do business with Russia. Morgenthau wanted to do business with Russia, just like we had been doing before World War II. Um,
Mm.
we could make a lot of money in Russia. Why shouldn't we? And leave Germany out of it. Just they get nothing, and America and Russia now will get all the business. And so there was that huge division in America that's torn us apart. The ones that wanted to do business with Russia and the ones that wanted to rebuild Germany. And you see what's happened is that we've rebuilt Germany. And, we are now financing the Azov battalion, and which, gets me back to my other big thing of the day is, I posted on my Twitter a picture of 1926, the KKK march in Washington, D.C. with the U.S. Capitol in the background, and, thinking, well, welcome, white supremacists back to town. It's been a long time. Welcome to Washington. And I am really disgusted at this whole thing, because that's what it is. It's that half of our policy making that wanted to uh, support the 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 Nazi side of things, and that the financing of that, which David and I and you have dug into very deeply. um, they wanted to get their money, the interest on their dollars, even if it meant to save all the Nazis and send them to South America. And Martin Bormann creates 900 corporations, and all of that stuff we read about and talk about really did happen. So now, to see the progress of our investigation in that light, to say, wow, we can go all the way back to, when the Pope first got temporal power, the donation of Pepin, through the Gulfs and the Welfs and the Ghibellines, and into the Reformation, and all of these things bring us to a point where I think we can acknowledge that there is still a huge divide in the people that are trying to run things, and the one side of them is the oligarchical cartel side, and the other side is the imperial, uh, uh, kind of like the Pope side, like the ancient empires are always are still there. The only way to run a world is through an empire, and so a top-down empire. But either one of them as is poison to the average person. Neither one of we You have no rights under either one of them. You have no rights under an oligarchical empire, and you have no rights under an imperial empire. And so that's, if we just look at it and say, my God, this is so complicated, we can't figure it out, then it's despair and we lose everything. So we can't do that. We have to keep analyzing. And I think really, the comparison between what Henry Morgenthau wanted to do to Germany and what actually did happen shows a big fault line in this country that exists still now. And between the people that my dad was on one side, Alan Dulles was on another side. Those sides still exist. Getting back to the DTRA and the BARDA thing, I think you've really hit up on a very interesting vein of research right there too. So anyway, that's what I've been doing, is really digging into this very esoteric idea of what happened to that huge amount of money that was amassed in ancient Rome, from their conquests of all the ancient civilizations. It gets into the hands of the families that survive. A lot of these people claim descent from Julius Caesar, by the way. They do.
Good
I
for
mean,
them.
yeah. Well, I don't know if you saw my show about Boris Johnson and the London 2012 Olympics, where the guy that had the kids in the hospital beds because the virus has come out in the 2012
Oh, I have.
Olympics.
Yes.
And then this figure rises up out of the bed, and he's got a gold helmet on, and I swear it's Boris Johnson. And Boris Johnson has this thing about the Roman Empire. He writes books about the Roman Empire.
He does? I didn't know that.
He's fascinated with it. And I mean, he did a TV series, I think, if I remember correctly. I put it's on my show that I did on that. But so, there, I want to be the Roman Empire, I want to be the British East India Company, Neither one of them is good for, Mark Kulacz or David Cranmer Underdown or John O'Loughlin. They're all elites. It's just different gangs of elites. But by recognizing that, we can keep pulling at the fault lines and hopefully pull them down.
Well,
that's my theory.
At one point, God said, those who are going to rule the world are probably going to be evil because they love the world more than they love other people. So there's going to be that. I use a phrase, like casual corruption, everyday corruption, old world corruption, a few wars here, no bid contracts over there. Some people screwing some other people out of land, and these things are horrible. And it's been that way since the beginning. And I think we're supposed to, of course, not just tolerate it, but to try to call it out and correct it and so on. But this pandemic, this is just something different. It's if you look at all there's yet another pandemic bill being worked on, the Pandemic Preparedness Bill or Pandemic Avoidance Act, or I don't even know. There's so many of them right now. And if you just look at all these laws, all of these bills, all of the things which are being looked at, it comes down to this. The ideal American is one that will sit alone in a glass box, eat what he's told, get vaccinated when he's told, and that's it, and not move. The closer you are to a monkey in an isolated box, eating what you're told, doing what you're told, taking your medicine, and allowing yourself to be measured as often as possible, the closer you are to the angelic, perfect American. That's where all of this stuff goes. It's not about your health. It's not about money. Maybe there's a power element to it, but and I think biological research is freaking fascinating. But we have this war right now over who's going to be able to control all this data, who's going to be at the top of the heap. And you just look at every bill, every law that's being passed. This is what it comes down to. How do you get people to become the monkeys in the box without them realizing that they have become the monkey in the box? And it's a simple view, and it's actually removed from all statements of departments, agencies, names, banks, and the amount of data which could be collected, and the hypothetical power which could come out of this decades from now, if some amazing revelations were to be made, it's more money than it's more wealth and power than all the money on the planet right now. So there is a lot of wars right now, intelligence wars, agency wars, non-government organization wars, trying to get to the top of the heap. And, it's all nonsense. There was a statement made by Dr. Redfield, the previous CDC director, who, I don't actually think is the worst person out there. Okay. I have a little bit of a soft spot for him because of some statements he's made about getting our priorities in order, but even he's still towing the line on a whole bunch of things. So you're never going to get any, real transparency, it seems, at that level. But that said, again, there's going to be, people want to have extra yachts and feel as though they own the town and whatever, and that's fine. And the more, we orient our lives around wanting to fight that or even become that ourselves, the further we get from what's really important. But at the same time, this genetics research agenda, man, it's got to be called out. And the more our nation and our families get divided into fighting over simple hypotheses about, is it they just want to kill people? Is it control? Is it money? Oh, they just want to save health. The further I think I just don't feel as though we're making any progress there. And I'm starting to see this. I feel like we're kind of stuck in the mud a little bit right now. So anyways, that's kind of a brief summary of where I've been. And I just did want to take a second and thank you, John, for being my friend for the last several years. Thank you for the show, being a guest on. Sorry I had to take a few weeks off. I just had a lot of other stuff to do. I needed to catch up some of my own research. And with your invite, I would love to come on, have another regular spot once or twice a month next year. But we can work that out with your assistant when the time comes. So thank you, John, for being one of the good guys out there. Thank you, David, for being just a machine with getting all this data together. And for the other people in the research community, I'm actually a little tickled inspired right now by Nick, who took a few minutes on your show just to call people out for sacrificing so much time and energy into this. It's done because you just feel as though you have to. You know, you can't live with yourself if you knowing what the capabilities you have and what you can contribute. And I think that's what draws a lot of this into this, you know, our own personal stories and our own skill sets. And thank you, both of you and other people in the chat. I don't have the chat window open right now, but if you're a big part of really my family right now. So thank you. And David, any final thoughts? I'm sorry, I'm taking over your show, John. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm being a director here.
Yeah. I feel the same way. I mean, I felt very, I try very hard to, do the best I can to, tie things together. I think that it's been, I've really enjoyed, following your show. I feel like I've literally watched every episode, and
I'm sorry.
No, I love it. I feel like it's been so fun watching your, improvement. And I don't know. I think, again, like it's hard because I personally feel very satisfied. I mean, as far as like the improvement of our group and our knowledge base and putting things together. And I feel like it's been a really gratifying experience learning, but it's also like really, I mean, I feel the frustration of feeling stuck in the mud too. Cause I'm the same way. Like even just like following like a chat in the show you did earlier where, regular people that watch all the time are still, not skeptical of like certain characters, like a Robert Malone, or like, oh, well, I still like him, or, and it's just like, well, I mean, it's, that's hard for me because I don't want to be the one, be just railing on the same people over and over again. But at the same time, like there are a lot of problems there, with their histories. And again, like that's what I look at, like John was talking about with like the 60s and the virology from then and the move to vaccines. I mean, you just, like follow like a Jonas Salk, who's a, very much a legend in the space. And, he went from the, the University of Michigan and the Park Davis Company in Detroit. And then he goes out to San Diego. And then, even when you're talking about the, the Indians coming out with this this paper about this idea that there could be HIV in there. Well, I'm immediately thinking of Robert Malone and his fight and his PTSD with Indira Rama?
Indira Verma, yeah.
Who was
the very, very famous virologist, HIV hepatitis researcher out of
Salk?
It was a Salk. It wasn't Scripps. I'm thinking Scripps Institute, but yeah, out of the Salk University.
Both
30-something year career, exactly. Spotless, well admired, and then all of a sudden, well, like a year or two before the pandemic, I mean, I don't know personally, so I can't say that these allegations aren't true. But suddenly, allegations of impropriety and being inappropriate with other female assistants, and then he's out, and then you can't talk about him anymore. It's like, well,
it's and but again, it's it's hard because there, there's just feel like I'm repeating myself, but the people are just afraid for their families. And so, and you have the backup of a lot of the media or the people on, online and social media. And they're, I don't know. I just feel like I just am hopeful that there'll be this groundswell of people that, that start studying it, and that the stories will be easier for people to understand, to follow along. Cause, it's, I don't know. I want to, I want to be hopeful and feel like there'll be a good resolution where our people can really feel good about, their understanding of what's going on. And if you're going to make serious charges towards people that, that you have, that you really, have good information and facts to back that up, so that people are treated fairly, that they're, cause it is, it's a serious thing, and a lot of it, it's just I don't know, it's just a very uncomfortable time, and again, it's I'm just hopeful that something will spark a kind of a greater exposure, and that will, that there will be a good result.
It's how you fight it, David. It's how you play it.
Yeah. Well, let me add just a couple things since and we are going over the 9. So if you need to wrap it up, just let me know. But I want to bring a couple of other names in since we're talking about new people in our world. One of them is Denis Rancourt, or Denis Rancourt, French physicist and statistician who has done amazing work on the all-cause death statistics of Canada, United States, and also India most recently, and has been able to make some amazing deductions. Denis, Denis, Rancourt, Rancourt,
I've
and
heard it
he's
before. I'll look
very
into it.
active on Twitter, and so I really think he's compelling. Very, very good stuff to show to people that are not, and you don't need to get into spike proteins or any of the,
Good.
the genetic stuff. It's just a matter of simple statistical analysis shows, according to him, there was no pandemic. There just wasn't one. Now, that doesn't mean there wasn't a coronavirus, doesn't mean there wasn't a spike protein, doesn't mean that there is or is not a continuing problem with but with a disease itself. But he does show some startling and quite scary statistics concerning post-vaccination results. And so that's a very important source that I'm glad to have. Also, Gigaome Biological, J.J. Cooey had a great show about a week ago with Dr. Joseph Lee, MD. And I was fascinated and just compelled by his passion. And so I wanted to just read something that he wrote on his Twitter today. This is Joseph Lee, MD. You can find at www.lungvirus.com. He says, 1.1, it's a fucking war. You just don't see it as one. You just don't see it as one, right? It's a war against our children. Didn't we all get mad and emotional and cuss and lose it when the World Trade Centers went down? Didn't we say, let's use polite words to the enemy, don't cuss at them? How many people passed away? World Trade Centers, 5,000? I guarantee you many more died from and I won't say the word that starts with a V, in the US.
Yeah.
Many, many more. And you want me not to effing curse? How many of those who refused the shots lost their livelihood, got their jobs stripped away from them? Tens of thousands. Do you know that aside from killing someone, the worst thing you can do to them is take away their livelihood? And it goes on with, I think, kind of I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore attitude. And I say, right on, Dr. Joseph Lee. Maybe that's what we need, is we really do need to get angry. I don't know what else to say. I am angry, but once again, we do kind of tend to get caught up like deer in the headlights. There's a lot of danger out there. It's coming at me. What do I do? Oh no, I'm freezing. I don't. Which do I go? Left? Do I go right? It's like the goalie in the penalty kick at the end of the soccer match. Which way is he going to go? I don't know. Oh no, I'm stuck in the middle, and I missed the whole thing. Anger, gentlemen. I think it's time to consider getting mad.
Oh, I think we're motivated. It's just having to keep our cool. That is part of the machine, I believe, wants us to act irrationally. To start to lose control over this energy that we have. There seems to be plenty of agents to to divide that energy, to misdirect responses, to trick people into taking the bait on bad evidence. The Stu Peters movie, which I believe has a lot of good content in it, also has a lot of some potential misdirection in it as well. Was it accidental? I don't know, but it doesn't help. I didn't need a movie to know any of that. I already knew it. You just look around, look at the newspapers, look at the Facebook feed. You don't need a movie. Sometimes you don't even need to see the data. But now what we see is now clouded with videos of people who have dropped before this V thing ever started. So now the whole thing, all of that energy is contaminated by that, and that's that's what we're up against. So there's no shortage of energy. I mean, look at how much each of us have invested in this.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, it takes a lot of drive and a lot of determination for so many people to have invested so much of themselves into something. That is impressive. And I'll tell you what, that is scary when it comes to trying to keep these narratives together. That is scary. But we can lose it all, or at least each of us, by, I don't know, just losing our cool. And I've become better and better and better at that. I used to think that getting mad and throwing a keyboard would actually make a difference. It doesn't. It is brutally effective to keep your cool and just to keep working hard. I have friends, and now you guys are family in this battle with me. So I agree with you. I'm hoping to have Dr. Lee on my show soon. Here I am saying something, and I haven't even gotten the email back from him yet. But I feel confident that I'll be able to get something to work, because I have some friends who have recently interviewed him, including Jonathan Cooey. And fingers crossed with that. So I agree, John. Response, David?
Well, I have to say that I am, I feel like it is hard. It is hard because, I think anger is one of the natural emotions of people, but we've been very much trained that it's a flaw. And again, if you can't control it, or, you just have to be, but again, I feel like my best advice always is to, be true to your nature. And like, I don't feel like my nature is to, yell at somebody or really get angry, but, it is, but I feel like for some people it's natural for them to be that way. And if that's, that suits your personality and it's authentic, then I think that's, be authentic. But
that's good advice.
I want to say too is that with with the family talk, when people like attacked, your credibility, I have to say that I don't watch Dr. Andrew Huff that much, but I of course feel connected to him because he has Michigan connections. So I feel like I call dibs on anybody from Michigan. But he was rattled. He was on an interview with Emerald Robinson, I think her name is, and I feel like he's not comfortable talking. And again, it's one of those things where it puts us in a hard situation because that he has his DOE clearance. That he's working has DTRA, so he's able to legally speak in a way that may not make sense, or which makes it hard because I always run into this problem when I'm trying to explain things to my father. Like, he wants to see it. He wants to see it written somewhere. He wants to see an annual report that has the data that I can. And when you're talking about these programs, which come from the Manhattan Project, that have these of being run by intelligence agencies, you have to triangulate the information and just use the best data points to try to put together a story that you're not going to get a document that verifies it. I mean, look at what's happening with even with like JFK information just this week. You know, they're releasing some information, they're still withholding other things. So it's hard because you don't have a way, you know, when you're dealing with people that are working in the intelligence agency and they have clearances, it you know, it's hard to call them out because they, you know, again, they are chartered where they can deny it, and that's the standard. So that's always it's probably what makes it tricky, where you get this sensation where you feel like you're just stuck in the mud, because, you know, I mean, like even just yesterday, a guy that claimed to be Meyer Lansky's grandson responded to a thing that I posted and said, "My grandpa never met Roy Cohn before." And it's like, well, if it really is your grandpa, he also was famous for being, you know, like a Borman and creating all these shell companies and not putting his name on anything and having proxies for every corporation he was involved in and not having his name on any assets. So you can just say, yeah, he never met Roy Cohn, but you can also counter that and say, well, he also, you know, grew up in New York and was partners with Lucky Luciano, and Roy Cohn grew up in New York and his dad was a judge. And, you know, so you can go through but again, he can just say that and try to, you know, discredit your, you know, what you're trying to say. But again, it's hard when you're dealing with people that, you know, because this program is being run, like as you've identified, it's through BARDA, it's through DTRA, it's through DARPA. These are all intelligence programs, so it makes it really tricky.
I'll give you this. I'd be willing to bet a lot that it was not the plan to have Andrew Huff on InfoWars in the year 2022. I bring this up because if you don't think you've had impact, David, or you, John, or if I look in the mirror, don't think I've had an impact, or other people in the chat here, there are a lot of things happening right now which never would have happened if collectively we did not do what we have done. Things are, yeah, they're not on plan B, C, D anymore. They're like on like A17. They've looped around a few times, right? So it's been a lot of contingency plans. That doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, problem solved. But the, you know, the good efforts, the hard work has had an impact. Things have moved. There have been people in Congress and testimonies that never would have been there if it wasn't for the work that we've done. You know, the good news is that as you go further and further down the list of contingencies, you're going to find people who are, I mean, I think probably one-on-one, I think Huff's probably a fine guy. You know, I've read a couple of articles from him. He seems like a reasonable person, you know, personable, you know, really, you know, seems very positive, but, you know, he's been pulled into this right now. I mean, I can't say I feel bad for him, you know, when you live on 47th Street in New York City. But at the same time, we have had an impact. So anyways, feel positive, people, that we have moved the needle, and accept that, you know, the end game may not be one that it may not happen in the next year or 2 years, but as time goes on, the efforts will have paid off and be enjoyed by somebody, be appreciated by somebody. So that's all I have to say. Anyways, thank you, John.
Well, you know, guys, when you look at it that way, it was in July of 2019 that we had our first charrette. We got together and went out, poked around at Gibson Island and the Russian retreat, and you know, Annapolis, and you know, maybe stirred up a little bit of resentment on some people's parts, and then so we set up our next one for the next January. And lo and behold, right before our next charrette, what did they do? Boom. Coronavirus.
Cooties.
coronavirus. And we almost had to shut it down. I mean, we were very, very close to not having
Mm.
anything in January because we didn't know, but finally, and there were trolls out there trying to shut us down too. So
No
yeah,
doubt.
maybe it was all triggered by that first charrette in July that
Well, I'm not sure we can go that far, but it might have had some impact. The butterfly effect. I'm sure it had some impact.
all right. All right. Well,
It
it's
had.
great to have us all back together again. And thanks for coming back, Mark. We're going to look forward to having you as a regular again in 2023.
Look
And
forward.
David Cranmer, Underdown, fantastic work. Folks, follow him on Twitter. You'll get an education every day. It's really a pleasure to work with both of you.
Likewise.
All
Merry
right.
Christmas. Happy New Year, guys.
Guys, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everyone. Thanks for being with us.